This session is a introductory session to the Python language. We are going to go over a basic introduction first. I can introduce myself, and then you can introduce yourself, and then we can go through an introduction to the language, the course overview, and we will also go through some lessons on strings as part of this demo class. Please feel free to interrupt if you have any questions. There's also a Q&A session in the end. So let's get started. So as a quick introduction to myself, about myself, I am an I'm a software developer working in the industry for the past almost 10 years now. Uh, I have worked on different stacks, starting from C Sharp, .NET, PowerShell, Python, even web development, JavaScript stack. I have worked with databases, and I've also worked on a data science project. So I have extensive experience working with the Python language. I've also worked on automation projects using the Python language. And so I would like to share my knowledge, my experience with you, and hope it benefits the audience who will be attending this course. So beginning with an introduction to the Python language. So Python is a general purpose language. It's a high level programming language, which means you can use Python uh, for automation, for scripting. For general purpose means you can use it in a variety of ways. It's not restricted to just web development or desktop app development. You can use it in many different ways. It's a general purpose language, and it's a high level programming language, which means you don't have to go into writing machine level code or binary code or assembly code to be able to carry out you know tasks that you want to do. um, so running a programming construct, running your program is not going to take uh, too much of effort in terms of learning, because you're writing in a high level language. So um, the emphasis Python emphasizes on code readability. Okay, the language was developed for everybody so that everybody can use it. It is simple, and it has a um, very elegant syntax as well. So code readability and expressing uh, your code in fewer lines uh, has been the motive behind developing the Python language. Okay, so that everybody can use it. It shouldn't be very complex to use a programming language. We have seen the era of C++, and even today developers dread working on C++ because C++ has a lot of low level programming constructs, and you have to remember a lot of syntax, a lot of uh, programming commands. You have to be very strict with semicolons and brackets throughout your program. So these are the some of the restrictions that we see with low level languages, which Python to a very large extent uh, has reduced and made it easy for everybody to easily work with the language. It's also free and open source, so you don't have to pay to download Python on your system. It's open source. That means it's not proprietary. It's not like a company owning this product. Um, the code is available in the open source world. You can um, use Python, and you can even extend Python with your own custom code because it is open source. You can even contribute to the Python community if you have the skills and the knowledge. Okay, and it's an interpreted language, which means you can run the code as soon as you write it. So in a lot of the other languages, like we see in C sharp, you have to first write the code, and then you have to build the code, you have to compile it, and that compilation takes its own time. It's going to convert all of the code into machine level and then give you an output. But Python is an interpreted language, so you can just run the code, and it just runs line by line and gives you an output immediately. So it doesn't compile the whole program to give you um, your desired output. And there are advantages to this because now you can prototype very quickly, right? So if you have to just build a POC or a prototype quickly, you want to solve a problem quickly, you can do that, uh, you know, much faster with Python. And popular versions of Python that the industry has seen are Python 2.7, 3.1, 3.2. Currently, we are running at 3.10. And there are improvements that are coming in quite frequently. Just recently, they've added types in Python. We'll talk about that in a later session. Typings in Python, and they keep improving. They're trying to ensure that uh, that the language remains bug free. Of course, no language is perfect, but they always try to address the latest issues, bugs that come up, and um, also looking into the security side. The language has to be secure. So the Python Software Foundation, the non-profit organization that maintains the open source code for Python, they regularly release updates, and um, we are going to be using Python 3.7 for our sessions. The official documentation is quite extensive. It's available at python.org. So you can read the official documentation, and that's going to be your go-to resource. Okay, and nothing can replace the official documentation. Uh, every course has to be uh, you know um, every course that you take for Python, it has to be accompanied with the official documentation. Okay, you may find your answers to problems, or to your questions, to your queries, in many different places online, but nothing compares to the official documentation. Okay, I highly recommend bookmarking the official documentation, and always follow that. We're going to make it a practice to refer to the official documentation, because it's developed by the developers of Python, and that's the true golden source of information, okay, when you're learning this language. And just a fun fact that Python wasn't named after a snake. It was named after a famous British sketch comedy series called Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Okay, so that's a quick introduction to the language. But why do you need Python? You have so many languages in the world. You have Java, you have C++, and most of the languages already available in the market can solve just about any problem. Okay, um, for example, for artificial intelligence and machine learning, which are really hot areas these days, you already have R, you already have Scala. For desktop app development, you have C sharp, you have C++, For web development, you have JavaScript, Java. Why do you need Python? Why do you need Python? So, like we saw in one of the previous slides, that Python is the aim for building the Python language, for developing the Python language, was to build it for everybody, to make it general purpose. Anybody can use it, can learn it quickly, and apply it across their problem, to solve their problem in across different domains. And so that makes uh, Python appealing, because anybody can learn it. Okay, it's a good first language to learn, because it gives you the confidence that you can go into more complex areas of software development. It gives you the confidence that you can approach, more difficult languages. Okay, so the first point here says that you have a very simple, elegant English-like syntax, and we will see that just in a moment. Fewer lines of code compared to other languages like Java. Let me just quickly show you a comparison. So just to show you a comparison between Java and Python, the first code you see here is a hello world example in Java. Okay, that's about four, 5 lines, okay, of code just to print hello world in Java. And the next one is an example of printing hello world in Python. It's just 1 line of code. Okay. So you see that you are accomplishing something in much fewer lines of code. And this is just a very simple example. It's all over the place in this language. Okay. Uh, many of the uh, many of the things like adding, subtracting, or reversing a string, reversing a number, or sorry, a string, or uh, doing complex computations. Okay, even scientific computations in Python just needs few lines of code, 2 3 lines of code, even 1 line to accomplish some of the tasks. You don't need 4 5 lines. In many other languages, you don't have that facility. So this makes learning Python quite appealing, and it's not very strict. Okay, you don't need uh, sugar coating. The term sugar coating means when you're having the restriction to apply a semicolon in the end of a statement. Many languages impose this, right? You have to put a semicolon in the end, or you have to put curly braces, okay, to enclose your, like you just saw in the Java example, okay, to enclose your function or your class, okay. So you don't need all that, okay. Um, you don't even need to declare variables separately, okay. You don't need to declare variables as public or private, like we see in some of the other languages. It may have its own advantages to make your variables, declaring your variables as public or private. But the other part, if we see here, the other advantages that we see here is we don't have to do all that in Python. You just use a variable. As soon as you the variable is created, you can start using it. You don't have to declare it separately. So just to make it very simple for you to understand that the syntax is not very strict, doesn't impose too many restrictions. Another big advantage of using Python is that it works on many different platforms. Okay, we have seen languages like .NET. The .NET platform from Windows was exclusive to Windows for many years. Just recently, they have extended support in the Mac OS world, but it is largely on the Windows platform. So that restricts developers to build cross-platform applications. Okay, Python runs on a lot of different platforms. Okay, so Windows, Mac. In fact, Mac and Linux come with Python pre-installed. You know that? So you don't even need to install Python in those operating systems. Maybe you need a higher version. They have a lower version of Python, but you already have it as part of the distribution. It's also on Raspberry Pi. You can install it on Raspberry Pi. Raspberry Pi is a very small operating system. You can it's a very small device where you can just install um, um, the Python programming language and use it for purposes like you can build your own camera, and that camera can capture images. You can do image processing. There's a small project that I worked on, which was on computer vision and image processing using Raspberry Pi. Okay, so you can install Linux and you can install Python on it, and it's a very small device. So just about any platform, you name it, even mobile app development is now possible with Python. Game development is possible with Python. So supported on different platforms. It can work as a functional or object-oriented language. So there are languages that are strictly object-oriented. You need to have a class, and then inside the class, you should define some structure or constructor, and then go on to define functions for the class. So that's highly object oriented in nature. But Python supports object oriented paradigms as well as functional paradigms. So functional means you can carry out operations on arrays and lists, on collections of data without having to create separate class objects or objects in what we say in functions. Okay, you don't need to do all that sugar coating. You can just simply, if you know how to work with, for example, how to work with lists, how to work with a collection of things, you can just perform operations. Intuitively, you can perform operations on the collection of things and get your result. So that's quite convenient, and that is why it is quite popularly used in data science and machine learning world. You, you don't really need in-depth knowledge of Python because the if you're doing analytics work, you just need some basics of Python, and you need to know how to work with data, and the functional paradigm, because Python can be used in a functional way, allows loading the data in a list or array and then manipulate it very easily. So you just need to know how to work with it. And like I said, that Python is an interpreted language, means it runs on an interpreter system. You can run the code as soon as you've written it. The prototyping is fast, and it has wide applications across domains. We'll see so many different domains um, uh, today use Python. Okay, if I'm just talking about these 5 domains, you're targeting a very vast majority of applications. Okay, you can build server-side applications, server-side APIs. Okay, in web development, it's so popular that there are 2 frameworks, Flask and Django, which have literally dominated the server-side API development market. They are very popular frameworks now. and quite mature, actively maintained as well. Okay, so web development is a very promising domain where Python is used. Software development, it's a very broad domain. Okay, it can be desktop app development. You can build desktop GUI apps. You can you can even build games. Like I said, mobile apps now also. And software development also includes building web applications, right, in a way. So system programming. I've seen Python scripts replacing shell scripts in Linux and bash scripts in Windows. Okay, so system programming, even at the Windows system level, you will be able to write scripts. So vast application in software development. Mathematics and scientific computing. Okay, statistics. If we just talk about statistics, there is a whole library for statistics, and working with uh, big data. Okay, if you're dealing with big data, there is a library called PySpark. Then working with complex mathematical problems, differential equations, integrations. Okay, uh, you have libraries for all that, and it's extensively used in scientific computing today because of the fast underlying interpreter. Okay, but just to let you know, the interpreter, Python, the most popular Python interpreter is C Python, okay, which is written in C, the C language. So that's quite low level. C is a low level language. So whatever you write in Python, it interprets down to C. Then we have automation and scripting. Like I said, you can automate so many tasks. You know, tasks with Excel files, CSV files, reporting, uh, you know, if you need to call an API and uh, get some data from an API and then generate a report and then send the report through email to a set of stakeholders, you can do all of that. A very simple script can do that for you. Or you want to connect to some database. Okay, if you're familiar with databases, it's a way to store data. If you connect to a database and generate a report from that database and send an email, you know, all that is possible. You can connect to Box, Google Drive, Gmail. You can send emails to Gmail. Okay, so wide applications in automation and scripting. And script, this has been one of the most popular areas, I would say. I have personally worked in automation and scripting for a long time with Python, and the industry is really booming. Uh, Artificial intelligence and machine learning, needless to say, uh, this has been the most popular and important area. It's one of the reasons why people learn Python. Okay, because they in future they just some people just want to pursue their studies and research in this area, so they learn Python because learning the language really helps. Um, Helps in improving their skill set in these domains. And just a brief history of Python. Python was created in the early 1990s by Guido van Rossum at Stichting Mathematisch Centrum in the Netherlands as a successor of a language called ABC. It's a picture of Guido van Rossum. And in 1995, the work on Python continued at Corporation for National Research in Virginia, where several versions of the software were released. The work continued further in May 2000, and the core development was moved to beopen.com to form the Be Open Python Labs team in October of the same year. the Python Labs team moved to digital creations. And in 2001, the Python Software Foundation was formed, which is a non-profit organization created specifically to own Python related intellectual property. So Python Software Foundation is the organization that maintains the Python language. They also maintain the documentation, and uh, and this is the organization that also conducts a lot of events, right, all over the world. And as you're learning through this course, I encourage that you participate in these events. They have a lot of virtual events. You can visit these events and make a um, make a good network, meet a lot of new people, expand your knowledge, and share your knowledge as you go ahead. So now that we've talked about Python, we have some basic idea of about the language. But what are we going to learn in this course? This is a course overview. We're going to start with the Python basics, the introduction, and how we're going to install Python. There are different ways to install Python, and then we'll get into the data types in Python, variables, operators, how to use conditional statements, um, break, continue statements, range function, string objects, working with strings, and then we'll have hands-on exercises. Then we get into the depths of Python data structures. Okay, so there are different kinds of data structures in Python that we really need to understand properly, because each data structure um, has its own usage. You cannot use one data structure to accomplish some task that can be done better with another data structure, right? So you should know when to use a list, or when to use a tuple, or when to use a set. Okay. So once you are familiar with the data structures, then you have um, the most basic tools in your toolkit. Okay. Uh, there are many other things, but you really need to know the data structures well. That's, you can say, it's the first starting point. And then we get into functions. Okay. Functions are important to understand because you can do a lot of tasks, um, um, in just simple syntax. If you just write 4 or 5 lines of code, it can do that thing for you once. But maybe you want to do that 4 or 5 lines of um, um, task multiple times. Okay. If you want to print hello world multiple times, instead of writing print hello world multiple times, you can put it in a function and just call that function. You can even call that function many times, and you don't have to just keep writing uh, by a print hello world every time. So functions will be a way there where you can um, quite easily put together your program, your simple lines of code in one place, and you can make those lines of code to run repeatedly. Okay, by just calling that function. Okay, so we are going to be getting into the basics of Python functions, but there are some interesting topics here which which we'll go through when we get to it. In the end, there are hands-on exercises. Then you have Python decorators, generators, iterators, a little bit of an advanced concept, uh, OOP concepts. Okay, so now we're getting into classes and objects. Then we have files. As you will see here that there are hands-on exercises after each chapter. So this is comprehensive Python course. It's not just that you're learning theory here. If we are saying hands-on exercises, it means that we are going to do everything hands-on. Okay, and by hands-on, I mean we're going to set up this Jupyter. You see the word here, Jupyter. We're going to set up a Jupyter notebook. Okay, Jupyter notebooks are an interactive way to execute code. Okay, whatever you just write in a cell, you can run it. Okay, so if I just press Control and Enter, it's running that piece of code, print hello world. So as we go along in the class, I encourage each one of you to just follow along, run each cell. I'm going to provide you with the notebooks, and you're going to try out things in the notebooks. Um, we'll have an interactive session. That means it's not just that I'm writing some piece of code and you're just running it in the notebook. There will be some questions given to you while we are doing, so that you think. Okay, so learning a language is logical thinking. It requires logical thinking. Okay, it's just not that you learn syntax and you're good. You have to develop a habit of thinking logically, and to develop that habit, we have to solve problems. Okay, so we are going to start with very simple problems, and um, you will be running them in the Jupyter notebooks. Okay, so file handling, uh, we're going to work with many different kinds of files, and we should know how to work with CSV files, Excel files. The things that you used to automate within Excel, you can automate within Python as well. So it's really cool, and you're going to enjoy working with files. We have some interesting examples, and then we'll get into modules and packages, errors, exception handling. This is very important, because what if your program fails? How do we catch errors? Okay, and as a developer, let me tell you, you will be encountering a lot of errors in your career. Okay, so the thing that you should be used to is encountering errors and researching on how to solve those errors. Okay, so exception handling, having a good understanding of exception handling, error handling, is very important. Okay, so you need to set up robust exception handling in your program. Nothing should escape. If it is failing, it should shout and say it is failing. Okay, and that is what exception handling is for. And to be very specific with the errors. Okay, you cannot just show some random error. Okay, we have to be clear about what error we want to show. We'll get into that. It's a very interesting topic. Collections is this is very unique to Python. Okay, you know, collections allow the collections library allows us to perform very interesting operations on collection types. We'll come into collection types. Collection types are those data types where you can store a collection of things, and then you can perform operations on them. Okay, so here's a good list of collection types, and there's a good number of operations that you can perform on these collections. You may wonder, as of now, you may wonder that what is the use of working with collections? Okay, and just to give you a simple example, okay, what if you're dealing with a million rows of data in Excel? Okay, a million rows of data in Excel, and you want to store it in a variable, or you want to do some manipulation on this data, right? So with collections, you can do um, data manipulation. Okay, it has the required methods, the functions that allow you to perform these operations quite easily. Okay, and then SQL database access. Uh, Needless to say, if you're in software development, you have to work with databases. And for those who have never encountered databases, don't have to worry. We'll set up an SQL database, and we will uh, even write a little bit of SQL because you need to know the basics of SQL. It's SQL stands for Structured Query Language, and it's very simple. Okay, Uh, just to tell you, databases are a way to store data. Okay, and once you store data, you want to get data time to time from that database. You may also want to insert data or delete data. Okay, so we're going to see some common operations in SQL and how we can connect a database to in Python, um, and then use Python to interact with the database. Okay, it's a very important topic because just about every project today requires a database. Okay, you are going to see databases all over the place once you get into the industry and you start using Python. And there's a hands-on project also. So that's interesting. And then we get into the GUI development. Okay, so building desktop applications in Python. Okay, again, we have a hands-on project. Then we get into network programming. Okay, so knowing a little bit about what is a client, what is a server, what is a client server architecture, how does the client interact with the server, and um, how we can build a simple chat application. Um, you know, because when you're just chatting in, let's say in WhatsApp, it's nothing but communication between a client and a server, and we can try and create a similar chat application, not as brilliant as WhatsApp, but just a simple chat application using Python. Okay. Then we can work with date time. So it's important to understand date and time. Okay, because you're going to encounter date time objects quite frequently. Okay. Just to give you an example, when you're working in the industry, um, everything that uh, happens in the software world, it is recorded. Okay, let's say if you're generating a CSV file or you're sending the CSV file by email to your boss, or or whether some event happening in the project, any event, okay, whether a server is crashing, for example, everything is recorded in a timestamp. And more often than not, you have to work with server logs or infrastructure logs or email logs. You have to work with logs, and logs have timestamps. Okay, so that's just one use case I can give you where you may encounter date time, but date time is ubiquitous. It's all over the place. You have to understand how to work with datetime objects in Python. It's not very complex once you get it. And then regular expressions. I would say regular expressions is so important from the perspective of being a efficient developer. There are many developers I know who have been developing for many years, but they haven't mastered the skill of writing good regular expressions. Okay, um, we'll get into the in-depth discussion on regular expressions when we get there. But just to give you just that regular expressions um, help you to get um specific data out of a large amount of data. If you just give a pattern, some kind of a pattern, like for example, an email address has a pattern, right? There's a string, and then there's the at character, and then there's another string, and then you have a dot character, and then you have another string, right? So maybe you have a very large file and you just want to get all the email addresses from that large file. How do you do that? Okay. Maybe I can just write a regular expression on emails and it'll just get me the email fields. Okay. So working with data, I'm giving you a lot of data examples because working with data is very common. Okay. Once you become a Python developer, you're eventually going to come across um, problems where you have to deal with data. You have to do data handling, okay, data manipulation, all those things. So regular expressions, very important topic, uh, and a very good topic for interviews. For those who are going to sit for interviews, they are going to ask this from here. Threads essentials. It's a little bit of an advanced topic. Once you're good with the topics before this, then we step into threads. Okay, and highly recommended if you want to enhance the performance of your program. Okay, although Python is quite fast by itself, but if you want to understand concurrency and threading, how you can utilize your CPU's memory in an efficient way, then you should learn about threading. And this is also another popular topic for interviews. And then there are some other topics. We will go into type hinting, frozen sets, pylint, okay. Um, then Git, okay. Very important to understand Git, version control, code version control, because we'll see a lot of code and we should be able to maintain it somewhere. And Git is going to be our code repository, okay. Image processing, PDFs, working with PDFs, sending emails, SMS updates. So you can say that these are small utilities that you can you should learn, because when you're trying to solve a problem, they come in handy. They really come in handy. And of course, there's a hands-on project in the end. So as part of this demo session, we are going to have fun with strings. Um, Generally, um the data types in Python are divided into
Hello, sir.
hello.
I'm sorry to interrupt you in between. It's time
Mhm.
up for a demo. We'll just wind up with this another topic and go through if Arisher has any of the doubts and clear his doubts, and we'll just end up now. Okay.
Yeah, sure. So I'll just cover a little bit of strings and it's over anyway. So just to
Okay,
let you
sir.
know that
Sure.
a string is a collection of one or more characters. Okay, a character is just a character like A, B, C. Um, Even space is a character. Um, and in other languages, you have a data type called character, but in Python, you don't have a data type called character. We have strings. Okay, and you can even represent characters as strings in Python. But just to make it simple, when you bring characters together, you form a string. A string is a collection of one or more characters. Okay, and they're enclosed in single quote, double quote, or triple quotes. Okay, as you can see here, double quotes, and then there's an example with single quote, and then there's an example with triple quotes if you want to write multi-line strings. Okay, you want to write in multiple lines, enclose it in triple quotes. And just to give you a gist that once you create a string, let's go to the notebook here. Okay, and just I was giving an example, right? It's got the English like syntax. Okay, let's put fruits in a basket, and then for fruit, each fruit in the basket, print the fruit. Okay. So it was just an example of the English like syntax. But just coming back to strings, these are the examples that we saw. And you can see it is so easy to get the length of a string, means how many characters are there in a string. Okay. I just need to call a function called len, which stands for length, and pass the string hello. And that gives me the number of characters, 5. And I can easily get the first character of a string, okay, by passing this just next to the string. Okay, this is a representation of how we are going to access each character in this string. Okay, it's also called an index. Okay, just to show you how how indexes look like. You can see this is the word hello, and the indexes start from 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, forward indexes start from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 when we go from left to right. And when we go from right to left, it's called backward indexing. Okay, you just need to start from -1, -2, and then up to -5. Okay, so just to get the first character, you just need to pass the index position 0. Okay, so I just take hello, the string, and in square brackets, I enclose the first index position as 0, which returns h. Okay, and how do I get the last character? By looking at that graphic image, the last character is O. How do I get that? I can just pass -1 as the index, right? Or I can pass 4 as well. That would give me O, right? So hello -1 or hello 4 returns back O, right? I can just run it and run it. But you can see here I'm using the string hello multiple times, right? I'm using hello here, hello here, hello here. How about if I just store hello somewhere? Okay, so that I just don't need to keep typing that string again and again. And this is a simple example. You could have a very long string also. Okay, so how about I store it in something? Okay, and that something is called a variable. Okay, here variable s stores the string hello. Okay, and like you saw, there's the print statement which will print something. If I just pass s to print, it prints the word hello. Okay, because it's storing the string hello. And then I can just carry out the same operations on s. So like I said, hello 0, I can just say s of 0, s of -1. And how about I just want to print each character in s? I can just say for character in s. That's so English like, right? For character in s, print character, and it prints all the characters. So this is a quick um, introduction to Python, and we talked a little bit about strings. Okay, here's a question for you. How do you get the second character? Okay, how do you get the second character E? Okay, so you think about this. This graphic is available for your reference.